30 cents per ton. New crop November, it's also up $2.10 at $477.40. Overnight gains in Malaysian palm oil and a steady tone in Chicago soybeans and soy oil contributed to the early advances. A lack of significant farmer selling and expectations for a reduction in seeded canola acres in Western Canada this spring also provided support. However, the continued lack of sales to China did remain a bearish influence, weighing on the market. The general technical bias also remains pointed lower. Soybeans in Chicago, they're stronger, May up 2 cents at $8.97 per bushel. While yesterday's disappointing weekly export sales did continue to put some pressure on values, beans found support today from increasing optimism over U.S.-China trade relations. End of the week speculative positioning was also supportive. However, flood concerns and ideas that the latest storm to hit the Midwest will lead to some intended corn acres going into soybeans instead did temper the upside. Rising production estimates out of South America also pressured the market. Corn futures, they're steady, May unchanged at $3.60 per bushel. Concerns over seeding delays across the Midwest were supportive, but soft export demand, large old crop supplies, and South American harvest pressure all weighed on prices, keeping corn in a tight range. Wheat futures, they're narrowly mixed. The May contract in Chicago up 2 cents at $4.62 per bushel. Kansas City May wheat also 2 cents higher at $4.32 per bushel. But Minneapolis spring wheat, it's drifting lower, down a penny in the May contract at $5.32 per bushel. Ideas that flooding and excessive moisture may cut into spring wheat acres in some areas, or at least delay planting, were supportive, although those concerns are largely priced into the market for the time being. In addition, any moisture will likely be beneficial for winter wheat, and that puts some pressure on values as well. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday morning, April 12th. In Winnipeg, for Markets Farm, I'm Phil Franz-Workington.
Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John can help you turn DIY into WOW with Boomer compact tractors from New Holland. They handle dozens of do-it-yourself jobs and make work easier with outstanding maneuverability and visibility. A models from 24 to 55 horsepower feature easy-to-operate transmissions, and some are available with an all-weather cab. Start turning DIY into WOW with Boomer compact tractors from New Holland. Stop by Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John today.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Bolin.
Well, he's not the host today. We decided we're going to turn the tables because apparently our host made some news earlier this week.
Right? A reason to turn the table. It's not often I'm on this side, but I think this is the second time. So.
Yeah, this is the second time. And the reason for that, of course, for anyone that isn't aware, on Monday, you were announced, Trevor Bolin was announced, as the new leader of the BC Conservative Party. So first, I guess, congrats on that.
Thank you.
I would like to hope you're excited about it.
Congrats on the craziness.
Yeah. Well, that's what I imagine is it's probably gone from 0 to 100 in the last 4 or 5 days here.
It did, yeah. We, it was a very well-kept secret. I mean, there was a leadership race, which is the extent of what people knew, and there was 3 or 4 people applying for the position.
So there was a vote by members, because as you just said, it was no one really knew anything about this.
Exactly, yeah. So there was a vote by the executive. So there was one of the candidates that was running and putting his name forward actually ended up supporting me. Mm-hmm. Another one ended up not making the cut. It's a very stringent process when being voted on by the executive, right? It's not like an election where, we see locally in Fort St. John for mayor council where, you sign up, put a $50 deposit down and buy some signs. It's a very intricate process. So it was about a month-long process of the actual application reviews. And then it was kept very, very undercover. It was and more for the purpose that it was such a big change, right? The BC Conservatives, although the oldest party in British Columbia and the first governing party in British Columbia, the BC Conservatives haven't had party status since probably the 1970s, right? Late 1970s, at which point in time it was a very powerful party in the province. And it was time to change it up, mix it up, update policies, update platforms, make it for today. And the party spent the last 3 months talking to people all across BC, hearing back from a lot of their members and potential members on what their concerns are. And all of that wrapped up and rolled up into Monday's 10 a.m. announcement.
So, first for you, why? Why did you decide that you want to throw your hat into the ring to run for the BC Conservative Party?
It's a great question, and it comes down to resonating with what the policies and bylaws rolled out as. So, my biggest concerns have always been, things like the carbon tax. And the carbon tax has been in BC for over a decade. We've been paying that for about 11 years. Mm-hmm. We now see it happening federally. We've seen it increased in BC. And you know what? I guess my problem with the carbon tax is in the beginning, it was a revenue neutral idea. People just kind of went with it because it was that feel good idea. But when we start to get reports that nothing's been done with any of those funds, there's no programs in place that are helping municipalities. There's no funding that's being given back to enticing a greener or a more greenhouse gas reduced approach. So all of these funds that have been collected from people in British Columbia for the last 11 years have been wasted. Mm-hmm. They've been literally squandered on projects that didn't benefit the province. And that was, I think, the big one. And
yep.
That's my big one. Another one of my big one is for years, all we ever hear is that, we've balanced the budget. And that seems to be this political catchphrase that we find all the parties using. And, as well as I know, you can balance a budget by moving anything around. But when you've got billions of dollars of deficit on the back end that you're not talking about, that's a concern. And we've seen for the last 20 years that municipalities cannot run a deficit.
Yeah,
it is against the law in British Columbia for a municipality to have a deficit. So they have to make those numbers work. They have to ensure that the financial sustainability and security is up front and foremost. The province isn't doing that, yet they're ensuring municipalities do. So, there's become such a huge disconnect between the way the province is running itself, the way they're mandating municipalities to run themselves, and we see municipalities starting to look at cutting RCMP members and borrowing money just to upgrade sewer lines and stuff like this. And that's a broken system. So, until you can get the entire province together, municipalities, provincial government, the whole 9 yards, running where it needs to be operated at, we're not going to find success in the province.
We'll talk a little bit more about the platform of the BC Conservative Party a little bit later, but I wanted to keep touching on a few things. So I think the one thing that I think a lot of people who pay attention to politics understand this, but I don't think a lot of people that really aren't well-versed understand what's the difference between the BC Liberals and the BC Conservative Party, because technically the BC Liberals have always been touted as our conservative party, right? In some respects.
Yeah, agreed for sure. And I mean, that was always the approach that was given. And I mean, there's three definite parties. I mean, four almost now, because the Greens do hold some seats, and you've got these different parties, and what it comes down to is it's no different than voting somebody for mayor, or voting somebody for a city councillor. It comes down to what sort of platform do you resonate with, and I think the main difference between the BC Conservatives and the BC Liberals and even the BC NDP are their platforms, and we're the only party that is against carbon tax, for an example, where you might find some of the parties that are both in favor of certain economical growth or different things like this. But honestly, it's about finding a balance, and I think the balance has been lost. And we had a party in BC that governed for a long time that their big push was jobs in the north and jobs in the north and jobs in the north, and now we've got a party in BC that their big push has been social programs and removing tolls and $10 daycare, and and it's one extreme to the other, and at some point in time, BC is the most diverse province in Canada, flat out, right? You've got one small little section of the province that deals in oil and gas. You've got a section that's in forestry, and you've got a section that literally has been real estate, right? The Vancouver's GDP growth has been real estate for the last 10 years. We need a party that's going to take the benefits that British Columbia has, enable the same resource-driven market that we've experienced, grow it, and then have all of British Columbia benefit. Because unless we all benefit, we're all gonna not be able to be a part of something great. And I think, the biggest problem is what we've seen is the province has been divided, and we've literally, we're like a 3-section province. Let's get it back together. Let's ensure that everybody benefits when the North benefits, and everybody benefits when the South benefits. And it's not a hard thing to do. And we've seen our neighbors, Alberta, you take Alberta, they've done that for 30 years until, the last couple of years under an NDP government. But in Alberta, it prospered together, and everybody prospered. And that's what I want for BC. I want everybody in BC to be able to prosper and literally champion the fact that we are as diverse as we are.
You've received a little bit of flack this week, I would say, mostly from hardline conservatives, that you were a supporter of the BC Liberal Party. Yeah. I think you supported Dan, probably Pat as well too, Richard as well too, Senator Neufeld now. Right. Again, what would be the response to that, considering that you have in the past been a BC Liberal Party member and also supported a number of candidates, not just from this riding, but provincially as well too?
Oh, for sure. And I've had that asked a lot. And that's the great thing about the political spectrum in British Columbia is, when I've supported the BC Liberals in the past, it was to ensure that BC was represented, and the same thing I do on council now. And at some point in time when I start to see the changes come out and the fact that so much has been ignored, and I think my biggest issue starts to become when I see, the BC Liberals, for an example, no longer in power, official opposition, hammering the NDP about ICBC. 15 years ago, we should have been allowed to have private carriers for insurance in British Columbia. 10 years ago, we should have had ride hailing. So, it becomes one of these issues where it's like, why do political parties bash each other the second they're not in power for something that they never did, right? Mm-hmm. We have the opportunity in BC to have ride sharing. We have the opportunity in BC to have private insurance carriers. We have the opportunity in BC to scrap the carbon tax, promote the fact that we have the industry here to build a refinery in British Columbia so that we're not paying $1.68 on the island or on the coast. When I take all this, and again, I have nothing against the BC Liberals. I have nothing against the BC NDP. Nothing we do trashes anybody else. It comes out with solutions to the problems that we have. I will support anybody who has solutions that are going to make BC better, and I wasn't seeing those solutions. Mm-hmm. So at some point in time, it was similar to me running for council when I was 27 years old. Put up or shut up, so I decided to get up.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of council, 12 years, right? We're at 12 years, a member of council. Your plan for that seat is what? Remain on council for now? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to remain on council for now. Being the leader of the party gives me the flexibility to still be able to ensure that, Fort St. John's represented. I co-hosted the Community Awards last night, which I've done 3 or 4 years in a row now. The basics behind the party is building the membership and hearing what British Columbians want. So it's going to give us a good opportunity in 2019 to really touch base with people from all over the province. It's not about one certain part of the province. It's about, how can we grow BC? A made in BC approach, mm-hmm. which has been our recent tagline that's been in the media. I'm grateful that I can still be on council while I do this, because I certainly do love being part of the changes right here in Fort St. John, and eventually, more on a provincial level.
So we're probably about 2 years away from an election, unless something. I don't really believe anything's going to happen. I think we're looking at an election when we're supposed to have one in 2021. Clearly, you'll be running for MLA in this riding.
Yeah, if that's what happens, this is my home. This is where I've represented for a long time, and Fort St. John. The North hasn't had a leader of a party run in this area for an MLA seat, so it'll be interesting to see the dynamics. And and it was really interesting because a lot of the comments that have come out on social media from people in the Lower Mainland, on the island, the Kootenays, the interior, has been great. Somebody from Fort St. John is finally going to lead a party, right? Somebody from the North has finally stepped up and going to do this. So it's been extremely well received, on a provincial scale, as far as the North, knowing what needs to change, knowing what needs to happen going forward.
Of all the ridings in BC, probably safe to say that us here in the North Peace River North, and probably the South Peace are the ones that are the obvious ones where if you had a chance to elect a candidate from the Conservative Party, these would be the ridings. What other ridings do you guys see potential in? Because I think that's the biggest thing, right? You haven't had a seat since the 70s.
Yeah.
How
Which
do you
was
get?
Victoria.
Yeah. Well, okay. They're interesting take when that's
Right?
now green, right?
Yeah.
So how, I think here it's not necessarily safe. You're going to have definitely a candidate to run against here in the BC Liberal Party. But what other areas do you guys see potential in to actually grow the party and actually get some seats in this next election?
Yeah, I think Prince George is another market. I think the central part of BC is another market. Quesnel, Williams Lake, down into that area. Kelowna is another large potential. The Fraser Valley, there's been a large conservative movement, and you know what? Honestly, there's two things I've looked at in the past couple weeks, and one was a mainstream poll that came out March 30th. So before the BC Conservatives had a leader, before we were making news all across Western Canada, the BC Conservatives were rated at 12 points. Right, there was 12% of the pie that people were in support of the BC Conservatives. I look at that, and that's a pretty big one, because without a leader, without any sitting MLAs to be able to pull that off, it was within 1 percentage point of the Greens, right, which is official party status. The second thing I look at is the federal election that's going to be coming up right now, and the very distinct popularity that the Conservatives for Canada are having in BC. BC has not always been a conservative province when it comes federally, but I think with what's gone on with the scandals of the Liberals and the issues the Liberals have had, I think you're finding BC starting to look for alternate options to what they've always done. And like I said, just because that's the way it's always been doesn't mean the way it should be. So I think there's a couple things that start to distinguish a difference between certainly between the parties, but certainly towards the way people feel that BC should be moving forward.
How has the reaction been from some of the people that you sit on council with, or, first off, Dan Davies, who's our MLA and potentially now you're going to run against, as well as, Bernier in the South? How's the reaction kind of been from people that in the community and they've now seen this change and where you're going forward on your political career? It's
been crazy. It's fairly big news. And I think the reason Fort St. John embraces it so much is I've been in politics for as long as I have in this area and business as well. And I think the second thing is that, they're excited to see a party represented by somebody from the North, because, we're all in BC, but there's, this is where the resources come from. This is where the GDP comes from. This is, a small part of the province that makes up, a large amount of the spectrum when it comes to the budgets and the finances. And, Dan and Mike and her worship and the rest of the council members were equally as surprised as the rest of everybody, right? So nobody knew what was rolling out until it literally rolled out in the Pan Pacific at 10 a.m. on Monday. Dan and I have been in touch. And with Mike too, it's not that, hey, I think you've done a bad job, or hey, I think that you should be replaced. It's not at that level. And it needs to be at the level of the fact that, there still are MLAs. I respect them both. It wasn't anything against them or to slight them. It was simply, seeing a party that had finally formed a platform and formed a policy for BC when I think BC needs it the most. Because I think as we're going to go forward in the next few years, we need to ensure that BC is well represented. We need to ensure that it's affordable to live in British Columbia, because it's not right now, and it keeps getting worse. And these changes can be made in BC, and that's what's most important.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll talk more with the new host of the BC Conservative Party right here on, Trev Talks. Kind of weird to say that.
Jandale Home Spring Sale is starting, a little over a week ago, actually. But Mother Nature didn't quite agree with our timing. So now, Jandale Home's real "oh, please let this actually be spring" sale begins. $18 million in inventory must go during this sale. Just like all that snow had to go to make this work. You'll save up to $20,000. Check out Jandale's 15 show homes in Grand Prairie. Don't miss your chance to save thousands, because like winter, Jandale Home Spring Sale does eventually end. So visit JandaleHomes.com for more info.
Discover local businesses in the agricultural industry at the Clear Hills County Agricultural Trade Show tomorrow from 10 till 5 at the Dave Shaw Memorial Complex in Hines Creek. There's free breakfast sponsored by RM Fuel and Tire and Fair Tire Craft from 8 till 10. Then over 90 exhibitors, the Kids Talent Show, arts and crafts, door prizes, and more. Plus live entertainment by Richard and Deborah Popovich at the Farmers Appreciation Banquet. The Clear Hills County Agricultural Trade Show tomorrow at the Dave Shaw Memorial Complex in Hines Creek. Sponsored by Canfor and TransCanada Pipeline Limited.
Winter is disappearing, but your gas bill isn't. It's never too early to make the change to save money for next year. Noble BC has your next furnace in stock and ready to go, including our brand new line of Detson furnaces. They are Canadian made and tested for the cold Canadian winter to not only keep you warm, but save money on that gas bill. Drop in, call, or even text 250-785-6679 for a truly remarkable introductory price. Noble BC in Fort St. John, located on 100th Street or online at noblebcfsj.ca. I almost hit that guy. I just can't see. The sun is almost always in my eyes. I wish there was a way you could just shut the sun off while driving.
Don't blame the sun, dude. With your windshield, it looks like Ace Ventura should be driving. All those chips and cracks make that glare even worse. You might as well close your eyes and drive.
In other words, I'm driving like my wife.
I want a divorce!
Alaska Highway Auto Glass. We take care of your windshield, not your divorce. The crack stops here on Alaska Road or call 250-0032.
Need a lift?
Looking for a short or long-term equipment rental? With over 2,000 pieces of equipment in inventory, from man lifts to forklifts and ground heaters to light towers, Levin Machinery has you covered. And they offer certified operator training, located on Alder Crescent across from TJ's Kitchen here in Fort St. John. Online at levinmachinery.com or call them at 1-866-LEVIT.
Stack it, reach it, lift it. Levitt.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca. This is Trev Talks with Trevor Bolin.
Welcome back, and we're sitting down with the new leader of the BC Conservative Party, Trevor Bolin, a name all of us are probably all quite familiar with here in Fort St. John. Wanted to talk, one of the big things that I know you and I have discussed just personally on a side note was we talked about vote splitting, right? And obviously because the BC Liberals have been seen as our conservative party here in BC in the past. The concern a lot of people, especially on the Liberal front, I would imagine now is, hey, if we get a revived BC Conservative Party, are you just going to split the vote? So therefore then the NDP continue to be in power. Your response to that?
We've heard that for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that when probably back in 2013 or 2011 when I bought my first BC Conservative membership, and held memberships for a couple of the different parties. You know what? Honestly, again, I don't know if people look at what the political spectrum is, and if you do the left to right, like most people consider it as, and you find, a lot of the policies of the left, are the NDP. You find a lot of the policies that we've seen come out in the last throne speech that Christy Clark did, and the operations that they've done now are very, very center to right. A lot of the conservative policies that we've written, that we've drafted, and that we're endorsing as our party moves forward are a lot on the right side. It's a small C government. It's less government involved in your life. It's less taxes, and a lot of the policies that we have like that aren't mimicked or aren't
But
from
won't
other
you
companies.
still see that the people who kind of followed the BC Liberals because they were the closest thing to a conservative party?
Yeah.
Go to you guys, and then does that not just, again, split the vote?
You know what? I think it did a lot of the people that voted for the BC Liberals in the last time vote because they are conservatives and that was the only choice. Well, probably, and now they have an actual choice to a conservative government, and I think that's going to be the biggest difference. Is people are concerned on a local scale, right? They're concerned on a local scale, whether it's Fort St. John or whether it's Dawson Creek or whether it's Prince George, and when you look at it on a provincial scale, I think that's when it starts to change, because I think it changes the fact that it's three very separate entities. It's three very separate policies and bylaws, and it literally gives people the same choice that they've got federally, right? When you're voting federally, you've got the option of those three parties. When Alberta right now going through their election, although it seems to be the Conservatives and the NDP, there is also a Liberal Party. There is also an Alberta Party, and a lot of the options that people are looking for can't be wrapped up into just one party that's trying to satisfy two different groups of people. Okay. So I think it's about the choice in British Columbia that you can now choose, not the party, not the color, the policies. What policies do you resonate with? Do you want carbon tax eliminated? That would be the Conservatives. Do you want carbon tax reduced? That would be what the Liberals platform is right now. Do you want carbon tax increased? That would be the NDP platform right now. So, even on issues like that people are dealing with in their everyday lives, it's three very separate policies.
So let's talk about the platform of the party. Safe to say you guys are more closely aligned with the federal Conservatives than anything, probably.
Yeah, we are.
Right?
We've got a lot of similarities with the federal Conservatives. We came out, our policy about a year and a half ago was to scrap the carbon tax. It's always been part of the policy. And now we see Andrew Scheer here in the last couple months has come out with a very similar policy about scrapping the federal one. The BC Conservatives are in support of the Trans Mountain. They are as well. BC Conservatives are definitely behind resource development, sustainable resource development, as well as reinvestment into those industries in the form of, getting rid of the red tape, making it easier to work in BC, and literally making BC open for business again. So, a lot of the platforms are shared. There is no tie-in between the two parties, of course, federal to provincial. We carry a similar name. We have a lot of the similar policies, but we might, again, have people that are after one or the other.
Biggest issue in our area right now clearly is the caribou and the issue surrounding what could happen with possible closures in this draft agreement between First Nations and the two levels of government. First, I guess the party's response to what we're currently seeing here in our riding, where we could see a very major financial hit to the riding for our economy if this actually goes through.
Oh, it's huge.
Not just our riding, but the whole Northeast.
The whole Northeast, and into the Northwest even. Yeah. I mean, and again, it's something that this, when it was my show a week ago, right? And will be next week. But I mean, one of the biggest issues that I've talked about on the show and over the years has been the fact that, you'll have a government body and whoever it may be, and they'll run out with this idea without doing public consultation, without realizing how it affects people at home. And I think that's the biggest thing is we've seen that happen on a lot of issues in the last few years. And the caribou issue is no different. It's one that, comes from the federal side of things as far as what their policy should look like.
Yep.
And, they push it onto the province picks it up and runs with it. And all we want is communication, right? I mean, I'm very glad that we have a federal election coming up in October, because, what we're finding right now is a lot of these policies that weren't that popular, or maybe were more of a special interest policy. The federal liberals right now are trying to push them through as fast as they can to make them law, at which point in time it's just about reversing that and fixing the issue. And the caribou issue is no different. I mean, it's passed down from the federal liberals to the provincial NDP, who didn't do their public consultation, who didn't come to Fort St. John until it was too late just to share a draft. This needs to happen the second changes are proposed, and find out who it affects, how it affects them, and what the alternative is. And we've all been a large part of voicing our opinions on the caribou issue that we're facing right now, and I mean, there's the backcountry side of it, but there's also the industry side of it. And when people actually break down what this is, it's detrimental to the resource industry in Northeast and Northwest British Columbia, and could be further if this gets extended. So at the end of the day, it's people standing up and being heard. And I think that's the biggest thing. And we need that in all facets of government.
So Kinder Morgan is the other hot topic, obviously, between BC, Alberta, federal government. You mentioned it before, in support of projects like Kinder Morgan. What about, we've also had the LNG tax that was just passed. I shouldn't say a tax, but the reduction, right?
The reduction
of a tax on LNG products. Just go into a little bit more on the resource side of things and the party's stance on those types of things.
So I mean, we're certainly in favor of Trans Mountain, and hopefully that can get resolved before anybody wants to turn off the taps, as has been threatened lately by Jason Kenney and Alberta. And a lot of people, again, don't know how to react to that either. And I mean, he's coming out of a sheer frustration position where he feels that he's been backed into a corner, and this is the only way to deal with that. And there's better ways to deal with that on our side, right? To be able to look at a project like that and the benefits that it does for BC, Alberta, and Canada. As far as and again, you see tax reductions on LNG, or incentives on LNG, and LNG is fantastic, and it is going to change things globally. And nothing makes me happier than us right here at home being the biggest driver behind that, because without natural gas, there's no liquid natural gas. But how are you, and this is where I always go, you're upping the carbon tax, you're charging families more money. They're now deciding, do I buy fuel to take my kids to soccer practice? Do I buy groceries, or do I pay my gas bill? Right? And in the same time, you're then giving companies, bonuses and reductions in taxes in order for a project to go through. Companies want red tape removed. They want, investors in British Columbia, whether they be small scale, medium, or large, they don't want incentives. They want assurances. And we need a government that understands to stop taxing the people that are going to benefit these projects and work on these projects, because it is a large, there's 5,500 potential jobs that's created in the Northeast alone from projects like this. Don't hurt them in order to see a project go through. Remove the red tape, support the project, champion what we do the best in British Columbia, and champion on a worldwide scale, right? Stop being the one that's trying to hide it in the north and penalize the people that are really making this project happen.
You touched on earlier privatization of insurance, automotive insurance in BC. You said you should have been done 10, 15 years ago, right?
Should have been done a long time ago. Yeah. Alberta has had huge success with the program and with the project. We're not saying you have to disband and eliminate ICBC. There's, we see a lot of the comments online that people like ICBC and they like the way that it's structured, and they're nervous about private insurance. And that's fine. It's not about one or the other. It should be about options. It's 2019. We live in the most diverse province in the country, and we have one option. That needs to be done, and that needs to be done now. One of the main statements we made is if we were to form government, that would be within 6 months of forming government, that we would open up the private side of insurance and allow more carriers to get involved in automotive, and that's going to save people. Honestly, the difference between my truck being insured in Alberta and my truck being insured in BC is about a $1,200 a year difference. That's a huge amount of money.
So what does it do for, deficit of $1 billion or just under $1 billion for ICBC? Won't that make the deficit in that company even worse, or that private,
Oh, for sure it is. But at what point in time are people not going to be insuring their vehicles to the safety that they should be? So, I think the issue with ICBC is that's going to be a deficit forever anyways until that's written off. So at what point in time do you realize that you've got a system that's broken and there's only one way to change it, and that's to encourage families to save money and encourage more business in British Columbia?
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning. Congrats, and I'm sure it's an interesting next couple of years at the very least.
Even the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, probably for you and the family and everybody else in the party. So thank you for coming in this morning, and that's going to do it for this week.
Thanks for having me.
It's the final weekend of the Brick's Big Sofa Sale. Come in this weekend and check out the best sofa brands, the best selection, and Canada's best prices guaranteed. Like a Cindy Crawford Home Velvet Sofa for only $6.99, or a two-piece sleeper sectional with adjustable arm and headrest for only $15.99. You save $800. Plus, get up to 50% off sofas, love seats, chairs, and sectionals. Some exclusions apply. Visit thebrick.com for more info. It all ends this weekend. The Brick, saving you more.
Bring that piece of jewelry you're no longer wearing to Carter's Jewelers and trade it in on what you've always wanted. Or use your old gold for a custom design. We do outstanding work. Carter's Jewelers, 9908 101st Avenue.
If hearing this freshly cracked egg is making you want one, here's a better idea. Take two. Get 2 McMuffin sandwiches for just $5 plus tax. Morning, noon, or night. For limited time only at participating McDonald's in British Columbia and Yukon.
If you're looking for hassle-free internet services, call the Peace Region Internet Society today. With coverage throughout most of the Peace, PRIS can get you connected quickly without the hassle of contracts or bundles. Visit PRIS.ca or call 1-800-768-3311 for more information.
Ryerson Contracting, proud to be a sponsor of local sports. Ryerson Contracting, specialists in pipeline and facility construction, turnarounds, and maintenance. Let Ryerson Contracting's combination of quality personnel and equipment complete your next job with safety and integrity. Call 785-0515.
Now, a Sports Boosters update.
Referees are needed for the 2019 box lacrosse season. There is a free certification clinic April 13th. Minimum age is 13 or turning 13 sometime in 2018. It's a great way to help out your local association and put some extra cash in your pocket. To register or for more information, email khedican@shaw.ca.
Send us your sports info, sports@moosefm.ca, or by fax, 263-9749. Sports Boosters on Moose FM. Our community first. This is Trev Talks with your host, Trevor Bolin. You've been listening to Trev Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.